Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Writing Diary. I'm Tiia, and it's so good to have you here. Today I want to talk about something pretty personal and why I took a 15-year break from writing and what finally brought me back. This is my story of losing and thankfully refinding that spark. Ever since I first learned how to hold a pen, I was writing stories, poems, just random thoughts. If I could think it, I wanted to write it down. It wasn't just a hobby, it felt like a core part of who I was, especially growing up. But even with that deep connection, I stopped. And it wasn't one single dramatic event, but more like a slow unraveling, a chain of things that just led me away. I remember writing my first book when I was about 13. Oh God, I can't recall what it was about now. But I do remember hitting close to 100,000 words before I decided, time for something new. Writing became this comforting evening routine. And then, like a lot of us, when I was a teenager, I had a diary. And for me, it was my safe place, my space to pour out all those big kid growing up fears, frustrations, and tangled thoughts. But one day, something happened that really, really changed me. I walked in on my mother reading my diary out loud to her best friend on the phone. And that moment, that broke something inside me. I climbed up and I stopped writing down anything personal and just let all of these feelings swirl around in my head instead. And which, by the way, terrible idea. Please don't do that. It's really not healthy. After that, writing shifted. It became a skill, something that got me good grades, sure, but also something that now carried this potential to get me hurt. The passion, the heartfelt honesty, the vulnerability, gone. I tucked it all away to protect myself, and it's a hard thing to say, but it makes you realize how deeply these actions can affect a young person's connection to something they love and feel safe with. Fast forward to my early 20s, and I dipped my toes back in with blogging. And it felt good. It was a way to get the thoughts out with a clear layer of self-censorship, of course. But I was in control. I decided what the world saw. And that period was huge for self-growth and figuring myself out. And through that, companies started noticing my writing, which eventually led to work for journalistic platforms and magazines. And this is what both made me and in the long run kind of broke me. The passion for writing came back to life, and I wasn't writing about me, but I was writing about things I deeply cared about, and I was getting paid for it, and that sounds like a dream, right? Well, the journalistic landscape about 10-15 years ago was changing. It felt like it was slowly shifting from respecting the writer as the creator of valuable content to seeing us as just people who fill the white space between ads. I remember facing pressure to write reviews that only said what the company provided the product wanted to hear. There were even threats of pulling ad funds if the wording wasn't just like the company wanted it. It was the early days of that line blurring between genuine journalism and unmarked advertisement. And there I was, smack in the middle of it. And I didn't know that I was autistic back then, but I already had this incredible strong sense of justice and having to bend and break the rules to please people who didn't even know my name, that caused an almost physical pain. After a few years of navigating these different shades of ethical compromise, I was completely burnt out. My passion had been twisted into this annoying chore, something they probably wished a machine could do without any pesky ethical questions. And honestly, I think ChatGPT could probably do exact that job now. The final straw came when the last place I worked at, a place that generally upheld journalistic standards, where I learned so much, got sold to an SEO company. They wanted our high-quality content, sure, but not necessarily us, the writers, and that was it for me. I just stopped. Writing was done. I tried a few times to get back into blogging, but I couldn't shake off that heavy, negative cloud that had formed around writing. It felt like a long-term relationship that had ended badly, and the thought of starting something new was just the last thing that I wanted. And so many, many years later, here I am. It actually started last year. My therapist suggested I try journaling again after our session ended, just as a way to keep up processing thoughts before they piled up. And you know what? I have filled 5 notebooks since then, with feelings, fears, thoughts the works, and somehow that simple act started to untie the knot. I began writing poetry again, then essays, short stories. Just expressing myself with words felt possible again. My friends who read my work really liked it, some even loved it. And while that encouragement couldn't magically undo years of complicated history with writing, it was enough. It was the nudge I needed to think, hey, maybe I want to do this more seriously again. It was this dawning realization that writing is me. It's part of my life, my reality, and people who didn't even know my name had tried to take it away, and they almost succeeded. So that brings us to now. This podcast, my thoughts about writing, all my plans and new approaches. I've got a lot to learn, and I'm generally filled with excitement. Experiencing a massive burnout like I did, and dealing with people who seem to care less about the craft and more about the profit margin has definitely made me cautious. I'm much more mindful about which projects I take on and how much I'm willing to let my market value define me. I've listened to a lot of talk from agencies and folks in the writing world, and sometimes I still catch whiffs of that attitude, seeing writing as the slightly annoying bit that fills the books they want to sell. And it's probably a mindset that develops over time. I truly believe that most people go into the industry with passion, a dream, an idea, which then gets ground down by economic realities. I mean, it's easy to just throw our hands up and say, damn you, capitalism. And there's a truth to that, but we're all navigating it, aren't we? I saw this post recently about how authors and writers are exhausted from having to be marketers, social media managers, publicists, and event coordinators on top of actually writing the book. And even when they're published, often there's very little promotional budget, so the books they sell are often the ones where the authors themselves have built a huge following and run their own ad campaigns and hustle for speaking gigs. And I couldn't agree more. While I never personally minded being active on social media because it's kind of the glue for my various interests, I totally get how uncomfortable it must be when it becomes this high-stakes numbers game that dictates whether you even get a book contract. I'm pretty active on Threads, especially in the book and writer communities, and sometimes the desperation in that numbers game is palpable. I see rage bait, those posts that intentionally designed to make people angry and trigger arguments. All for engagement. And sure, it gets the numbers, but in the long run, it can really damage an author's reputation. The thought that someone might risk being seen as ableist or racist just to chase a book deal, that's heartbreaking, and it's the side of writing that I want to stay miles away from. So to sum it up, I left writing because the professional landscape often didn't respect the writer, the creator, when it came to monetizing their craft. And I came back knowing that this core issue probably wouldn't ever completely change. It would probably get worse. But what had changed was me and my understanding that writing is my life and always has been. This knowledge gives present-day me a huge advantage over past-day me. I can now emotionally draw a firm line between the passion and the craft itself and the business of writing. The business part needs the art and the passion, but guess what? The art and the passion does not need the business part to exist. And that, my dear listeners, is such an important thing to remember. My writing doesn't need to be published to be valid, to be. And that's a pretty comforting safety net, isn't it? Knowing my passion will be my passion, no matter what swirls around it, as long as I protect that line. And this makes me probably less publishable in some ways, because I get it. Books and literature follow trends just like fashion and music. Being a writer in a hot genre definitely helps, but you don't become truly good at what you do by chasing trends and imitating others. You become good by dedicating yourself to your craft, to what you as the creator care about. And then maybe you have to wait for your time to shine, but when it comes, you'll be there and ready with experience. And let's be realistic. Sometimes our time to shine might not come in a way we imagine or even at all. Our work might not get discovered or deemed marketable at all. And that's when the separation between passion and business becomes even more crucial. Because then you haven't spent years of your life chasing a fleeting dream. You have spent years of your life doing what you genuinely love, following your passion. It's a mindset shift that's all about removing external pressure and detaching it from sense of self-worth. My writing has been published before, so that's a little checkbox I can tick for myself. And of course, I would absolutely love to get my fictional writing published, especially my English texts. That's another little personal goal since English isn't my first language. But again, none of that cements my existence as a writer because I already am one. I am writing and therefore I'm a writer. Simple as that. Leaving writing for 15 years and exploring other interests showed me one thing crystal clear. While you can juggle many interests and redefine yourself over and over, a true deep-seated passion, some might even call it a calling, in a specific field, that will never truly leave you, even if you try to leave it. And when you come back, like I did, you find something that feels like coming home. It's a sense of closure, of being truly, authentical yourself again. And it's a feeling that's hard to describe and maybe can only be understood by those who felt it themselves or who have lost themselves to the point where asking, "Who am I?" just echoes into a black void. It's more than just a hobby. It's more than just an interest. It shapes your life, your thinking, your way of processing the world. And that's the wonderful thing. Once you realize how your brain is wired for something, embracing it just feels utterly real and natural. And as you can probably tell, I've done a lot of thinking and a lot of brain work, as I call it, around leaving writing, being away from it, and finding my way back. It's been an experience unlike anything else. And if you see yourself as a writer, if it's the thing that just makes sense to your soul, then welcome. Welcome to this podcast. We're the community with the ink-stained fingers, or maybe just slightly greasy keyboards, heads full of stories and different worlds, and that undeniable burning urge to connect emotions to words.